Today is all about changing careers and starting over. I'm joined by the comeback coach, Rachel Gaddis. Rachel, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing, Elizabeth?
I'm so well. Thank you for asking. I'm excited. Before the show, we were just talking. This is a topic we have not touched here on the show before. So I'm super excited because the whole message of the power to pivot, right, is about at any given moment, you can use your choice and make a change. And a lot of people stay stuck in careers they don't like, they're afraid to make that change. And you're saying it's okay. You can use the resources and experiences to completely pivot your career.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm saying that. I'm saying it's never too late to do it. And I'm saying you'd be amazed at all of the things that you can use, right, in your career so far to make that change. There's so much in your experience and in your career history that can help you, that can make you stand out. That's going to be amazing as you pivot to the thing that you really want to do.
How did you get to this point? Did you also decide at one point you're like, I'm not happy, I'm not doing this, it's time to move on? Like,
Oh man.
I know.
I have been a chronic career changer my whole life. I mean, I felt like it was almost like my career to change careers. Like that was, in fact, I used to say to people that if only I could find a job where the job was to try all the jobs, that would be my ideal. So yeah,
I
I
felt
loved
the
changing
same
careers.
way. um I actually, maybe not, if I could find a career that would let me do all the careers, but I really had a hard time sort of settling into what I wanted to do. I thought there was something
Right.
wrong with me.
I did too. Yeah. In fact, when I met my husband, I told him, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So just be aware that I may still be figuring that out. I might try some other things. And he was cool with that, fortunately. But yeah, I thought there was something wrong with me. Um, but I got really good at it. Practice makes perfect, right? So I kept doing it and I kept getting better and better at it. And I found that I would meet a lot of people that would see that I was pretty good at it and they would want help doing the same thing. There were a lot more of us out there than I realized. And I loved it. I loved helping people to transition from a career that they were in that they didn't want to be in to something that they really wanted to do. And I also found that I loved the challenge. Like the crazier the transition, the better. Like getting a PM, like a project manager to a business analyst position, fine. That wasn't that hard for me. But getting like an admin assistant into a scrum master position, I relished doing things like that. Or getting like a hairdresser into a, project manager position. I loved doing things like that because there's so many nuggets in people's backgrounds and skill sets and stuff that you can use to help them do it, right? And people can't see that on their own. Sometimes it takes like somebody outside of you who has a particular perspective.
And it's so hard because we look at our own resume with a certain filter, and
Yeah.
it's really hard for us to see that next jump, or not even that. I think it's really easy to be very linear about it for ourselves without seeing the potential
Hmm.
of what could be. And you're
Yeah.
saying no, like, enough of that. There's another way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that word you just used, linear, it really jumps out at me because this is something I've been thinking about a lot this week. The whole idea of how a traditional resume, a traditional view of your career tends to be chronological. It tends to look at it as if you're climbing a ladder, right? And advancing somehow with each move, with each job. And, if you are making a series of lateral career moves, like a lot of us, job hoppers, a lot of us curious people, a lot of us lifelong learners tend to do, that doesn't work so well for you. Tell your story chronologically, and it's not going to make sense to people. It's going to be like, well, I did this, and then I did that, and then I did that. And they're going to be like, what? Like, you don't make sense to me. But if you tell a story about your career, forget about the chronology, forget about it as a line, tell the story about how you came to be sitting here in front of you today, and say, it's a funny story, Diane, about how I came to be sitting across from you today. I majored in this totally unrelated topic. And then I found that I was interested in this and I got an opportunity, invite them into your life. Tell them a story that makes sense. People love stories. They respond well to them. They will remember them. And therefore, they'll remember you after you've left the interview. And I mean, that really helps.
I'm curious, when I think about interviews that I've had and the traditional situational behavioral questions, tell me a
Yeah.
time that you did XYZ.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
When asked, I guess I see it two different ways, because you can either make sure that because you want to answer the question, you want to make sure that the story fits what they're
Absolutely.
asking. But do you think that there is any sort of like negative view of using that experience and telling that story from 6 degrees of separation for what you're applying for? Or
How do
how
you
would
mean?
you
Do you mean
overcome?
like,
So like I'm applying for the scrum master job, but I'm asked this question and I'm going to answer it based on my baking career, completely unrelated. Does the
oh, I
fact that
mean,
it's a like a situational based and there's certain things that they're asking for in that question help or hurt in this case?
well, I think you always want to come at the interview from the perspective of what you are applying to be, right? You always want to come, like if you're interviewing for the Scrum Master job, you want to come at it from the perspective of the Scrum Master. The storytelling I just talked about is more to overcome the chronological linear thinking, right? Like that introductory question they ask you when it's like, tell me a little about yourself or walk me through your resume. That always kind of makes those of us with like the weird resumes kind of go, how is this going to go? Like, I have one of those weird resumes. Like, I don't want to answer this, but you can really embrace that, right? And get control of the story by knowing what story you're going to be telling about how you got there and making that story make you look good. Because if you don't tell them a story, they're going to make one up. So that's what that's about. But when it comes to like the behavioral questions, the questions about the job, the questions that are really oriented at asking, can you do it? I mean, that's really what they're asking with each one of those questions. You want to answer those with the job in mind. You want to say, what I would do is, or what I did was, or the way that I've handled situations like that is. And you don't want to talk about particular job titles that you've had. Forget about having been a baker or a hairdresser or an admin assistant or whatever. Just talk about the situation. Those behavioral interview questions are giving you a gift, which is to set aside the question of what exactly you were doing when you ran into that situation. You could have been a nanny at the time, but you're answering the question, right? Yes, you ran into that situation and this is how you handled it. The specifics of the situation, you can tell that however you want to. So I kind of see those behavioral interview questions as like, I love those. I mean, for a variety of reasons. They can be a way to uncover how the interview applicant has handled them, how they're going to, communicate. But they're also a real gift to those of us who have changed careers a lot.
We've gotten a lot of good experience in those questions.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you take a client from looking at their resume in one particular frame and helping them rewrite it? Like, or is it the perception, or do you literally help them write a completely new resume?
Yeah, it's a good question. And what I do is not really focused on the resume per se. Like the resume is one tool that my clients have in their arsenal, and I don't focus on the resume with them. They will handle that themselves via, like any number of great tools there are out there. What I focus on with them is identifying the transferable skills and strengths and aptitudes that they have across their entire history. And, a lot of people just look to their jobs to do that, but there's so much more that you can look at, across like your entire self, across like things even before your jobs. Like, what are those things that you've been taking with you, through each experience in your life, through each challenge in your life? Sometimes it takes somebody kind of almost interviewing you and listening really faithfully to what you're saying to kind of pull it out of you. I think that's one of the places a coach can be really useful, is just listening and saying, I just heard you say the word this, for every single job you were talking about. I thought that was interesting. And then you'll be like, as the client, I did, like, really surprised. Um, so that's one thing. And then another thing is identifying what's really important to you, like in terms of your values and your, like, just what really matters to you, and stacking that up against like maybe the job that you're in or the career that you're in. Because when those things don't like go together, they don't have to be an exact match, but when the top five things that matter to you aren't even anywhere on your employer's list or your careers list, or worse, they're like the last five things, like they're almost like your employer's anti-values. I mean, that's going to cause you a lot of pain, a lot of friction. So
Yeah,
those are two of the first things that we talk about.
I love that you're connecting the values to the employer, right? Because we spend a lot of time at our jobs.
A
And
lot of
if
time.
those values don't align with who we are, you are setting yourself up for a world of pain. It's like the energy just sort of seeps out of you day by day. Um,
Yeah.
and but there's a lot of fear in leaving that job, especially for someone who might have been
Oh,
there, a
yeah.
while.
Well, and I think some of us, it all depends on how you were raised, right? But I think sometimes it feels like a bit frivolous, right? To be going, well, I'm going to follow my dream now, and I'm going to just, do what my heart wants, and, forget about this, practical career that makes a lot of money that I went to school for. I'm just going to go traipsing through the meadow and go, whatever, follow the rainbow. But the truth is, like, we don't, our career and our personal life and our health, these don't all exist in isolated swim lanes that never touch each other. It's all part of one picture, right? One sphere that's like our lives, and we're living in that sphere, and we can't separate all these things from each other. So if our work life is stressful and depressing us and causing us a lot of pain, and we're standing up for values all the time at work that nobody else around us believes in, and we're spending our emotional energy on that, and when we're not at work, we're thinking about work and stressing about work, we're crying on the way into work on Monday morning, we're stressing about it on Sunday night before we even go in, like, that's not a 50-hour work week, that's taking up all of our life. You're waking up at 2 a.m. thinking about work because you're stressed or whatever, right? I have been there. All of those examples I just gave are things that I have been through, right, personally. And I know there are people listening to you right now who they've experienced it too, or maybe are right now. So that's just the job part that I'm talking about. Then there's your personal life, like your family, your spouse, your kids. They're all dealing with the fallout of whatever's going on with your work life, And then there's your health, your own physical and mental health. They're taking big hits from all of these other choices that you make. So it's not just your job. It's not just your career that we're talking about. It is a choice about what kind of overall quality of life you want to have, you want your family to have. Like, it's not just about what you do for a living. It's not just about the salary. It's everything.
Oof. Is that a tough pill to swallow for some people when you're going through that? Because I think it's it's easy to connect the job with security. And well, I have
Yeah.
to stick it out because it's providing insurance or putting food on the table. And it's really easy to be stuck in that space, forgetting what you just said. But the stress of that can be
Yeah.
detrimental, to relationships, my energy and well-being, my mental health, my kids, all of it comes together.
Well, not for my clients because A, by the time they've come to me, they already have decided to make some kind of change. And B, because when I talk to my clients about values and like their overall quality of life, right? One of the values that you could have, like one of the things that might be most important to you when it comes to your career could be making a certain amount of money, and that's fine. But what I tell them is we want to account for all of that, right? You have to be honest with yourself about what matters most. And if it's like I want to make like an amount of money that does this for me and my family while also experiencing, like, there are trade-offs with everything. And so we want to make sure that we get that stacked up accurately for you so we can keep it in mind with everything else. And we want to get your flavor of ADHD right? Because what I do is I help women find ADHD friendly careers, often when they found themselves in a career or job that like is clashing with that. Maybe it's expecting them to be totally neurotypical, or the performance reviews are measuring them in a way that expects them to be that. So we're also kind of looking for that to fit right, because there's not just one type of career that's like, oh yeah, if you pick that one, you'll definitely be set.
What that is a fascinating idea. Like I've never considered, but what is an ADHD friendly career? Like, can you give us some examples?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you are like, as an ADHD person, you have all these traits, right? That tend to be shared among those of us with, like, we've all seen these TikTok videos going around, right? That talk about like what it's like to have ADHD, what it's like to be the spouse of somebody with ADHD. And um, so you want to look for a career, a job, an employer that is going to kind of be supportive, right? Be okay with those kinds of traits. So, like, some examples are we tend to want to hyper focus on something for a duration of time, so that we can like really deep dive into something we're interested in. So, a job that doesn't allow for that is going to be kind of a more uncomfortable fit. Whereas a job that allows for that and supports it is going to be better. So something that doesn't necessarily interrupt us a whole lot when we're really focused on something, that would be better. Because we all know what it's like to be hyper focused on something and then have somebody interrupt right at that critical moment, and you're like, oh. Um, some place that supports you in terms of like or has systems that support you for some of that just executive function stuff, right, that we're not so strong in, like being on time for things, or uh remembering to do like these little repetitive tasks and stuff like that. So some places are more out to get you if you miss a single one of those. Other places are more supportive and trying to like help you out and have systems in place to help it. Um, so yeah. And then, it's also other like the bigger things, right? Like having high ethical standards, high moral standards. This was a revelation to me when I started looking more deeply into this kind of thing, that those of us with ADHD, we have really high standards in terms of like what's right. Uh, and we have a compulsion to stand up for this stuff in our environments, even if we're the only one doing it. And I always thought that was just a me thing, almost like a personality flaw. And it's not just me. It's shared among most of us with ADHD.
That is interesting. Now, I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but I
Mm-hmm.
I have been that person a
That
lot of
person, right?
times. Like, and
It's
again,
uncomfortable,
it
isn't
is
it?
uncomfortable to sit
And
there and
it
be like,
isn't
why am I the
always
only
good for your
one?
career. Yeah,
But
exactly. How come nobody else cares about this? And
yeah,
it's not necessarily good for my career, or at least in my case, it hasn't necessarily been.
it calls in your question, right? Like, if is it me? First of all, is it me?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
does integrity mean what I thought it meant, right? Because if I'm
Mm-hmm.
standing up
Mm-hmm.
for what's right, right,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
to me, I'm standing up for my integrity. But if I'm the only crazy guy on the beach, doing this,
Yeah.
um, and no one else, like, is does integrity mean what we think it means? And
Yeah.
it it brings like you start to call yourself into question a lot.
Yeah, you're like, well, does it even matter that I'm standing up for what's right? But it's like, you can't help yourself. I would always tell myself, okay, I'm not going to fight these battles anymore at work. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to get dragged in. But then some situation would come up and I couldn't stand it. I would try not to, and I just couldn't stand it. I would have to do it. Um, and then it would go, like it always goes. I would be the only one again, because it didn't matter as much to anyone else. And it wasn't like people disagreed with me. They were just like, yeah, I'm not going to get dragged into that. You go ahead and do your thing. So yeah, that was a big one. And so that's another reason that the values thing is so important, right? You have to understand what your values are, which ones matter the most to you, meaning which ones would you go to the mattresses for, right? And then which ones are most and least important in the career that you're thinking of going to, so that you don't find yourself at loggerheads constantly with somebody like that. Cause it sucks, man. It just is the worst. And
I
it
love,
drains you and it puts you like, yeah.
oh my God. It's a time suck, an energy suck. And you're like, why am I waking up and doing this every
Yeah, yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Everything about your
day?
vibe right now, I'm just like, oh man, we are soul sisters about
Yes.
this thing.
I do also appreciate the Godfather reference with going to the mattresses, by the way.
Yeah.
um, tell us about transferable skills. Um,
Oh yeah.
how do how does one even start to like dip your toe in the water to figure out what a transferable skill is? Do I have any? Because I know we do, right? I'm big on the
We
communication
do.
skills, and but
We do.
let's define what that means.
We do, and we have so many more than we think we do. So some of the ways that you uncover it, so there's the obvious way, right, of just looking through what your skills are, like in terms of your LinkedIn list, your resume list, whatever. And then you say, okay, which ones have I been taking with me? Which ones have been like commonalities, shared like in a lot of my jobs. So that's one way. Another way is, what are people always telling me? At work? Like, what is the thing that people always say to me? So that's another way. And then another way is, what do people always come to me for? Like at work and in my personal life, what is that thing that like is easy for me and hard for everyone else? Like that's kind of like these might not be the same thing, but a lot of times in thinking about that, you can sort of find something. And this is where, like, if you're a journaler, you can like write about this stuff. Or if you're not a journaler, if you're more of an Excel girl like I am, you can like type it in your spreadsheet. But whatever way you like to capture stuff, kind of capture your thoughts on this stuff. And you can ask people too, the people that are close to you. You can say, so when you think of the things that I'm good at, or that you tend to come to me for, like, what do you think of? Because their answers may surprise you, you know?
Yeah.
And that's how we get beyond just the stuff like communications, and we get into things like things that are maybe harder to put one word to, but we get into things like, you're really great at getting a group of people together who don't have anything in common and getting them to feel like a group, right? And so what is that, right? That could be team building, or that could be consensus building, that could be a lot of different things. And so you start thinking about, what were those situations, right? What were they like? And that's how you start to build your list of your unique skills, right? And in doing that and thinking about all the places and jobs and situations, all the way back to teenagerness, maybe all the way back to childhood, then you start to get a picture of like, what is it that you bring, right, to the table?
So, in that sense, do you recommend that somebody start with a job in mind, or the like figure these things out first and then go look? So,
It depends. It depends. Some people are going to know. Some people are going to be like, man, I met a business analyst, who was consulting for somebody at one of my jobs, and I thought their job was really cool. And I think that might be what I'd want to do. That happened to me at one of my jobs. And then years later, I found myself transitioning into a BA role. Although I hadn't thought at the time that I could, it was like years later that I ended up doing it. And I thought back to that person I'd met, and I was like, you know what? It makes sense that I would do this now. Um, So some people may just know, right? They may have met someone, they may have run into a description somewhere, whatever. They know what they want to like try to look into. Other people may not know, and that's happened to me so many times in my career. You just know what you want to get away from, but you don't know what you want to move to. And this is a big deal because it can stop people from doing a career change because they think, and I know I felt that way a lot of times. We think that we have to have something, we have to have a plan before we can do anything. Have you ever felt that way?
Oh,
Like
100%.
like that you have to know, and you really don't. I mean, you can, what you can do instead is you can start to think about in general what you're looking for in your next role. What are the things you want to get away from? What are some things you'd like to move closer to? Don't think of it as much like a concrete move from one square to another. Think of it as more like a continuum. These are the things I know I don't like and I want to move away from. These are the things that I love that I'd like to be doing or moving closer to. And here you are on that continuum, just kind of moving along, right? So get away from the bad things, get closer to the good things.
I love that because, like you said, most people know what they want to get away from. But in doing that, we end up somehow continuing to sit in that cycle of finding the things that we don't want. And you're like,
Yeah,
nope, stop, shift. What do you want? Like, shift the focus and move forward. Forget about the
right, right.
backwards
And you don't have
focus.
to know specifically what you want. You know, sitting there and asking yourself, what do I want? You know, I
That's
don't
a
even
big
know what I
question.
want. I don't even know what I'm good at. Like that feeling, we've all had that feeling many times. So you don't have to know. You just have to know what types of things do I want more of in my life? What types of people do I want more of in my life? So just like think about this ephemeral cloud of stuff that you'd like to have more of, that you'd like to move closer to. That's all I mean about the other end of the continuum. Like, here's the bad, here's the good, whatever you can think of that's in the good, right? That's what you want more of. And just find job listings, find careers that seem to inch you closer to that.
I love that. It's simple, but not easy. Like,
It's not easy.
I
Yeah.
think you have to get over a certain level of discomfort and in letting the that old sort of career paradigm go.
Yeah. And those of us who have changed careers before, we know that it's hard to change careers. You have to kind of have a beginner's mindset to do it. You have to set aside a certain amount of ego to, you know, start fresh in a new career and sort of be bad at something, right, for a little while, or at least not be good at it, to kind of have that feeling where you wonder, like, am I terrible at this, or is everybody going to find out that I don't know what I'm doing and ask me to leave the premises, or you know, whatever the things are, right, that you think about. But it's also so exhilarating to learn a whole new set of new skills, to like create all these new neural connections with things that you used to be good at and things that you are learning how to do now. And it's like you get like this series of lateral moves. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's just, it's a fantastic way to live your life if that's what you like, you know?
So in listening to that, the thing that I wonder, does starting fresh mean starting at the bottom?
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. And it all depends, right, on what you are doing. You know, sometimes I have moved from one industry to another, which is a move, but it's not necessarily moved me, uh, you know, to the bottom. Like, you know, like for example, when I used to work in content, I could do content for, you know, the I did content for newspapers and journalists for a while. And then I switched over and I did content for retail for a while, like for websites that did like e-commerce. And so that was like, I didn't have to like start at the bottom because I already knew how to do web content, but I was switching industries, and doing content for journalism is totally different than doing content for e-commerce, right? So I was learning a new set of skills, but also still appreciated for my skill in doing certain web content things. Like at that time, knowing HTML actually mattered, so things like that. And same thing for like when I started to do project management work, right? I would do project management work for like e-commerce. I would do project management work for like advertising agency. I would do project management work for a consulting company, you know, and like those are different industries, but your role remains the same. And you can definitely make moves like that, right? Or like that keep the industry the same, but the rules change, you know, but your knowledge of the industry, your deep knowledge of the industry helps to keep you kind of, you're not starting at the bottom, in other words.
I think that's helpful for a lot of people to know because, and I know for myself, I've had gotten stuck in that, right? If I change jobs, I got to start at the bottom, I got to work my way up. And that leads to one, the potential to just stay where you are and not
Yeah,
move, or two, if you make the move, you're going for roles that are potentially less than what your skill
right,
set would
right.
give you. And then you almost get stuck in this cycle of like pushing harder to get raised up faster, you know, the faster promotion, the
Yeah.
faster next level.
Well, and there are like, it's like with so many things, there are so many ways to do it, right? So first you have to identify what is it that matters to you, and then what is it that you want. And then, you know, by the time I get through with my clients identifying like the values and the transferable skills and the interests, like we kind of know where you'd like to go. And that's when I think my superpowers really come in because I'm able to help them identify a path, a strategy to get them there. You know, and I'm great at helping them, you know, not to toot my own horn, but I'm really great
Please
at
shoot,
helping
go
them
ahead.
identify what are all the things they have at their disposal that could help them get there, right? Who are all the people in your network, first degree connections, second degree connections that you might know? They might look through their network on their own and say, no, I don't really know anybody. I mean, I know that one woman, Bridget, but she's not going to remember me, you know, that she's like a recruiter from 10 years ago. But I'll look at their network with them and I'll be like, what about that person? You know, if you approach them for this specific thing, you know, I see that they just left such and such company. And so they would like, I'm able to see things that they can't see just because of my background and because I am outside of their, you know, in their head. And I'm more objective, you know, and I can make suggestions to them. So there's your network, right? Who in your network might want to help you? There's your own skill sets that can help you. There's your own just experience that can help you, your own background, your own commonalities with people. Like maybe you went to a college that, you know, these other people all went to, or you had a job that like half of your network had. And so there's a huge network from that, whatever. So there's like, what do you have that could help you? All of those resources. There's also identifying all the different possible ways to do it, right? Like we talked about, you could work in the same industry, you could work in the same role, but there's also so many other ways. Like one way I would hop careers sometimes when I was starting out was by just working at a smaller company. When I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do, like totally, I would work at a place that would let me wear a lot of hats, either in a small company or in a small department, like a small just forming department in a bigger company. And that was at the time often a really great way to get to try different things in an environment where I could still kind of, you know, make a decent salary. So that's just to say that there are a lot of different ways to do it. And I think sometimes working with someone who has experience like seeing a lot of different possibilities can kind of help you figure out what matters most to you, how to get that while still getting all of the things that you want in some measure. But you don't have to start over. You don't have to like lose 50% of your salary. Like that's crazy. No. You don't have to you know, be an intern, an unpaid intern somewhere. You know, I think sometimes people's worst fears are like, you know, nobody's ever going to take me on as an unpaid intern because I'm like 50 and like, yeah, you don't have to do that. Why would you have to do that? You have great experience that's valuable.
Oh, you're dispelling a lot of myths here for a lot of people. I love it. Now,
Yeah,
you have a free download available for
I
career
do.
tips. Do you want to tell us
Yeah.
about it?
I would love to. So, my the thing that I created is it's called Change Your Get Started on Your Career Change Today. I think that's what I called it. And the reason I created it is because getting started can be the hardest part. I mean, I think Elizabeth and I have talked a lot about that on this show alone.
Yes.
And it's because it's really hard to get started. You know, sometimes you have no idea where to start, or it just feels really daunting, you know, because it feels like, oh, this is going to be like a whole big project and I'm burned out from my job, right? Like, and burnout can really compromise you mentally and emotionally and all the other things. So, anyway, the point is, I was thinking about all of that when I created this guide for people because whether you work with me or not, whether you get a coach at all or not, I want as many people as possible to change their career to something that they love if that's something that they want to do. So that's why I made this guide. And we'll have the link in the show notes, but you can also go to my website, rachelgaddiscoaching.com/start career change. Wait, let me double check my link.
We'll put the link for this in the show notes too.
Start career change today, and there's a hyphen between each one. So start hyphen career hyphen change hyphen today. I should really shorten that link, but anyway, that's where it is right now.
That's
And
perfect.
yeah, it's fantastic. And in downloading it, you'll also get yourself added to my email list, which I use all the time to provide information, offers, you know, some freebies once in a while, some great information because I'm always obsessing about this, right? And thinking about ways to make it possible, make it easier, dispel myths, all the things.
I love it. You are helping so many people reshape the vision and the trajectory of their life based on their career. And I absolutely love it because it's so easy to just sit in that stuckness and the limiting beliefs that we bring in. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Guys, make sure you check out the Comeback Coach. I don't know why when I say that, I think I need to sing it, but
maybe
Rachel,
you should do my theme song for me. I need one.
I'll create a jingle for you. Rachel, thank you so much. We'll make sure that the links are in the show notes. Guys, check it out. Go get the free guide. Check out the Comeback Coach. And we're going to wrap up the way we do every episode. You are never stuck. You are never lost. And you are never, ever alone. At any given moment, you can use your power to pivot, make a new choice, and start again. I will talk with everyone on the next episode. Take care.